So let me first tell you what developing leaders in a multi-generation means, okay, to me at least. So there's this whole thing about baby boomers, X, Y, millennials, and now there's another generation coming behind the millennials, right? Who will be in the workforce by 2022 or 2028, when we will be the youngest nation in the world. But I ask a question, is it the first time that there are multi-generations in the world? Answer is no. Okay, there have always existed multi-generations in the world. But why so much of noise now? And there's a reason to it, because a lot of research which was carried out started hitting, people's desks or screens, if you may like, only about a decade or 2 decades ago. One. Second, the generational behaviors and preferences have become stark in terms of their differences, in terms of their uniqueness, which probably was not there earlier. That's the second. And third is what we just spoke. The social and digital has actually made that debate and also the behaviors a bit more stark. So these are the three reasons why we need to make sure that we address and are cognizant about the generations, okay? Now, I have been fortunate enough to work in absolutely top-notch companies, starting at Colgate-Palmolive and then Johnson & Johnson and then Philips and now Sun Pharma, okay? Just 2 years ago, I moved back to India to head Sun Pharma. Or, as I usually say, to my colleagues, I joined Sun Pharma not to join Sun Pharma. Basically, I was invited by Mr. Dilip Sanghvi and I joined Dilip Sanghvi. But now that's what we are changing. Okay, we are building a brand known as Sun Pharma, and it's all happening with multi-generational leaders. So I was sitting up there and I was telling Harleena, so there are 6 colleagues from my team who have come to attend this conference, okay? So 3 millennials are sitting there, okay? And there are 3 X and Y who are sitting here, okay? And 1 baby boomer. Now these guys, they came half an hour ahead of time, okay? They had their tea, coffee, and got a good seat for themselves. They're taking notes. These 3 came 5 minutes before the conference was to start. Still managed to eat a sandwich, still managed to feed me a sandwich, okay? Had a cup of tea, and still figured out a seat for themselves. Now, these are the real differences. Now, should you value judge that why did you reach 5 minutes early? Or should you judge them that, oh, that's very cool, you guys came 30 minutes earlier? Now, is that an assessment of someone's commitment? Answer is no. This itself is the beginning of not passing a value judgment on how people behave, irrespective of their generations. I have seen millennials who turn up 30 minutes ahead, and I have seen baby boomers who turn up 5 minutes late. Okay? So, you got to be cognizant that there are generations, but don't generalize it. Now, one more thing that we found, and this is what my friend Josh Bersin was telling me. So I think it is in one of the Deloitte research, Deloitte by Bersin's research. They had a very interesting finding. They thought that the millennials are very good in social media. Answer is no. Just being present on Facebook, okay, or Instagram or Snapchat is not understanding the digital technology, okay? In fact, they found that Gen X and Gen Y people, relatively, in a relative comparison, are more tech savvy when it comes to understanding digital as compared to the millennials. Okay? Now, how do you deal with this data? How do you deal with this data? So, keep that as a context as we go ahead. So, the context for developing multi-generational ideas, and that's what I'm saying, okay? Here are just a few things that I have put. I don't refer to slides, but because the visuals look nice when you're talking, that they're up there, okay? One of the things that I have learned of having lived and worked in geographies, various geographies. So I had the good fortune of living and working in Singapore, Japan, US, UK, last was Holland, and now back in India. And I have lived and worked a lot in India too. So one thing that I realized is there are three things which are common across nations and culture. Okay? And one is that when it comes to the generational divide, I have seen it's common. You cannot say that there is no generational divide in US versus India. It's common, it's pretty much the behaviors, the needs, the expressions are pretty much similar. Okay, that's one. Second, I have seen is irrespective of the generation, all people love their country and their culture and food, if you can throw that in also. Okay, they just love. So there again the uniqueness starts coming in. Okay, and of course the third and the most important is that most people themselves are not aware that they are being assessed, evaluated, discussed from a generational lens. They're not. Recently, because of a lot of videos, being passed around on Facebook, Twitter, etc., there's been a bit of a debate, but they don't. So keep that in mind, okay? So with this as a context, let's see, so why do we need, what is the need of the multi-generational leaders, okay? Why is there a need for multi-generational leaders in our society? Even before we go down to the organization, let's talk about society. Why? Now, I remember a TV debate. I'm not going to name the people because I have no political inclinations. So I remember about 4 or 5 years ago, saw a TV debate in India where they said that this is the first time India is seeing a young leader. And the age of that leader was 67 years old. But the person was young because the person was getting compared to the old leader who was 83 years old. Right? So everything has a context. Everything is a context. Now, how do you define? So let me ask you. Some of you smiled and giggled a bit when I said young at 67. Why not? Why not? Why discriminate and say that because of age, you're not young? How do you define youth? Is it your skin tone? Okay. So, again, I don't want you to answer it right away here, but think about it. With that as a context, now come down to the organization. One of the biggest debates and the issues that I have observed, not just in the organizations that I've worked in, but also the friends that I talk to, across in the organization is they're grappling. They don't know how to go about dealing with the generational divide because they're not even sure if this is for real. Let me tell you, it is for real, but they don't know how to deal with it. It's a fact. So you are discriminating the tenured people or the people with age, okay, if you may like. I don't call them old. And you're also discriminating people who are young. Now, this recent news about the 29-year-old CFO of Kraft, okay? Now, if you go deep and find out, this person has not been appointed by Kraft. He was already a partner with 3G, a firm that has invested in Kraft. So they have transferred one of their partners who was working on that deal as a CFO. So if you ask 3G, the company that owns Kraft, and if you were to ask this gentleman, this is no big deal. But how can a 29-year-old become a CFO of a large company? That rattled. I mean, it was in the news all over. Correct? It is significant. It's a big deal. Now, time will tell. Now, all the young people are going to be hooked, linked, or compared with the success of this one individual. If this person fails, God forbid, I don't want him to fail, but God forbid if this person fails, then youngsters are not capable of occupying higher positions. Is that the way we are going to go? Is that going to be the construct of our thinking, our debate? And vice versa. If this person succeeds, that means all the young people below the age of 29 should be made CFOs and CEOs because that's what works. Think. Because this is really what happens in the boardrooms, this is really what happens in corporations when it comes to looking at leaders. And like it or not, most of the leaders, the senior leaders in an organization who make a decision, there's no diversity. They do not have young people representing. So I kind of dislike that. I kind of dislike that. But think about it, okay? Now, another one is, what are the challenges and how do we overcome them in developing multi-generational leaders? So these are the two questions that we thought we'll try and explore and answer, okay? So, fragmented industry and sector, having their own unique challenges. Now we have started calling, so the industry that I work in, Pharma, is known as old economy. I don't know what's so old about it, but it's known as old economy. The tech companies are known as the new age technology companies. So they're not called as young, but they are called as new age. And then there's the government sector. Then there's within the government sector a public sector. Then there's development sector, which is NGOs. The divide has become, very strong. In fact, people have started to look at it that this is the skill set that's required to succeed in the old economy. This is the skill set that's required to succeed in the new age technology companies. And this is the skill set that you need. I think the discrimination is beginning there itself. While as we all know, most skills that human beings bring are transferable. So this is a challenge. This is one of the challenges. You see, the socialistic approach, something that I have myself grappled with, a peanut butter approach, or if you may like, treating everyone the same. So you go and hire these, top-notch people from Accelara and TIS, okay, and Symbiosis. They join your company and they're young, they're raring to go, they're really good, but you are so cautious with them all the time because you don't want to upset the existing people in the organization. Even if they are capable and if they have the potential to create a higher impact. No. You are taking a very socialistic approach. Don't upset the apple cart. Okay? It's an issue. That's a challenge. How to deal with that? And of course, leadership development should be a culture, not a program. A lot of us, you must have heard about Ram Kumar, K. Ram Kumar, a very good friend. So Ram retired from ICICI and he started his own leadership development center at Khalapur. He's done a fabulous job, he's put that. And I had just come back to India then, and he came and had a coffee with me and he told me how he is. And I told him, I said, Ram, because he's such a wonderful person and one of the guys who understands what leadership development is and how to bring it about a culture. I told Ram, we are your first clients, start. And Sun was his first client. He takes pride in that and we take pride in him. And now he's just on a roll, okay? The entire focus of Ram Kumar, me and my team members, is not about building a program. It's about building a culture. Of course, there's a program in which we take our leaders through, a classroom, action learning, and immersive experience and all that. But it's about building a culture. How many companies do that? Does your company do it? Or it's just a training program that runs, okay? Think. Carpet bombing approach, I talked about it. Just bring one program and cover everyone through that. So these three people will train everyone, the carpet bombing approach, that it'll hit somewhere, it'll work for someone, okay? Create leadership at all levels, okay? There's a challenge. I have often said this. Leadership is not the leadership that's required at the top of any organization. Well, that's just 10%. It's a pyramid. Only 1% go to the top, right? And though they have an impact because they run the company, but the highest impact, if you read Uselit's work on a differentiated workforce strategy, you will realize that the maximum impact is created by leaders in the middle of the pyramid and the bottom of the pyramid, or close to the bottom of the pyramid. And what's a leader? Anyone who's managing a set of people or anyone who has an impact, even being an individual contributor, is a leader. They are the leaders. So what is the definition of leadership in your company? What is the definition of leadership in your mind? Is it just hierarchical position out there? Or is it people? To me, I often say this to my team, the biggest privilege for me in my 30 years of my career has been, having the opportunity to influence, develop leaders. That's been the biggest privilege for me as a leader. It's not the position, it's not the money that I've made. I'm happy with the money I've made, okay? But it's not about that. And even as an individual contributor, what do you need to do? You can ask any of my team members, here, and as Harleena said, either in Philips or J&J, go and talk to the people. I mean, once you are attached to me, you're attached to me for life, at least from my side, and also it gets reciprocated 99% from others. They are there. And whenever they need something, when they reach out to me, I make time for them, irrespective of how busy I am. I think this is a commitment that's required from both sides. This is what makes leaders and this is what creates culture. Disproportionate investment in people with higher level of potential, the one that I talked about. Don't take the socialist approach. Make a disproportionate, I'll tell you one thing. So my son is an engineer and he's passed out and he's working for a strategy consulting company now. And my daughter is in medical, okay? She's doing a third. Now, you see, he didn't go to IIT, but if he and me had a choice, we both had an aspiration. We wanted him to go to IIT. But he couldn't. He didn't. Not that he is lost out in life because of that. Okay? So, these are the things that you need to make sure are there. And of course, there are various other things. I think the time is also running out. The only thing in conclusion that I have to say is, it's not about developing generational leaders who are only millennials or who are, Gen X or Y. You have to develop everyone. Because leaders come across from everywhere in the pyramid. But how to develop millennials versus how to develop Gen X and Gen Y, that's what requires expertise. That's what requires a different skill and a capability. Think about it, and then don't just make a program, but create a culture of how you want to do it. With that, I think I'll end. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.